Everyone thinks they know Switzerland. Snow-covered mountains, luxury watches, chocolate that somehow tastes better than any chocolate on earth. But when I arrived in Zurich, I wasn't here for the Alps. I was here for something people almost never talk about: Swiss cities. Most travelers rush through them on their way to the mountains. But locals kept telling me something strange. Switzerland's cities might actually be the country's best-kept secret. So I decided to test that theory. And over the next few days, I would explore 4 Swiss cities that completely redefine what people think Switzerland is: Zurich, Lucerne, Bern, Lausanne. And along the way, I would float down a freezing river with locals, explore a secret underground military fortress, see art created by people society once called insane, ring one of the biggest bells in Switzerland, and cruise across one of the most romantic lakes in Europe. But first, I had to survive Zurich. I mean, because the Swiss themselves describe this city with 2 words: too rich, too quiet. Which immediately made me wonder, could the richest quiet city in Europe actually be exciting? The moment I stepped into Zurich, everything felt polished. Not just clean, perfect. The streets looked freshly washed. The trams glided silently. Even the pigeons seemed well organized. And right away, a local guide named Adrian Keller laughed and said something I'd heard many times during my visit. Y'all people joke that Zurich is too right and too ruhig. Too rich, too quiet. And honestly, he had a point. Zurich is one of the wealthiest cities in Europe. Banks dominate the skyline. Luxury stores line the streets. And some watches and store windows cost more than a small house. But here's what surprised me. The city doesn't feel flashy. Instead, it feels relaxed. That's because Zurich is built around 2 places: the Limit River and Lake Zurich. And locals treat both like their personal playground. Or people jog along the waterfront. Couples stroll hand in hand beside the lake. Cyclists glide through riverside paths. And the city suddenly feels alive. But the best way to experience Zurich isn't walking. It's floating. Because here, the public transport system includes boats. Which raised an important question. What happens when your city bus is actually a boat? I boarded a riverboat at the edge of the Limit River, expecting a tourist ride. But it wasn't. And this was actually part of the city's transportation network. People casually stepped on with backpacks, groceries, even laptops, commuting across town by boat like it was the most normal thing in the world. And honestly, it might be the most relaxing commute on Earth. As the boat glided past medieval buildings and quiet riverbanks, the city revealed a different personality. Zurich suddenly felt less like a financial powerhouse, and more like a peaceful lakeside town. But once I stepped back onto land, the calm atmosphere quickly turned into something very different. Because I had just arrived at one of the most famous shopping streets in Europe. And if you love expensive things, this place might be dangerous. Welcome to Bahnhofstrasse. This is Zurich's most famous street, and possibly one of the most expensive shopping streets on the planet. Here you'll find luxury watch boutiques, designer fashion houses, jewelry stores sparkling like mini treasure vaults. One display window featured a watch worth more than $250,000, which made me realize something important. If I accidentally dropped it, I would have to sell my organs. But not everything here is impossibly expensive. Hidden between luxury stores are small Swiss cafes selling tiny, colorful desserts locals absolutely love. Mini macarons, small enough to eat in one bite, fancy enough to make you feel rich. And luckily, cheap enough that I didn't need to sell my kidney. Yeah, but Zurich had something far more valuable waiting for me. Because just a few streets away stood a church hiding one of the most beautiful artworks in Switzerland. And it wasn't created by a Swiss artist. It was created by a man who painted dreams. The moment I walked into Fraumünster church, the room fell silent. Not because it was empty, but because everyone inside was staring upward. And when I looked up, I understood why. Yet towering above the church were 5 massive stained glass windows created by legendary artist Marc Chagall. The colors exploded across the walls: deep blues, fiery reds, floating angels, biblical scenes painted like surreal dreams. One window shows Jacob dreaming of a ladder connecting heaven and earth. angels climb the ladder like celestial commuters traveling between worlds. Another window shows King David playing his harp beneath glowing colors. Nearby stands Moses holding the Ten Commandments. And at the center, a powerful image of Jesus rising from the cross. The windows don't just decorate the church, they transform it. Light floods through the glass and fills the entire building with color. It feels like stepping inside a painting. But the most surprising art in Zurich wasn't inside a church, it was hanging inside a train station. And thousands of people pass under it every day without even noticing. Which made me wonder, why is there a giant angel floating above one of Europe's busiest train stations? The main train station in Zurich is called Zurich Hauptbahnhof, and it's massive. Every day about 2,000 trains pass through here. People arrive from Germany, France, Italy, Austria, all over Europe. The station never sleeps. But floating above the main hall is something surreal. A giant, colorful sculpture of a guardian angel. She hovers above travelers like a protector watching over the chaos. And honestly, if you've ever tried navigating European train schedules, you probably need divine assistance. But I wasn't staying in Zurich much longer, because my next destination was only 30 minutes away by train. And locals promised it looked like something straight out of a medieval storybook. A place with wooden bridges, ancient paintings, and a tragic lion carved into stone. So I boarded the train, and the moment we left the city, the landscape changed completely. Mountains rose in the distance. Blue lakes appeared beside the tracks. And suddenly the journey itself felt magical. 30 minutes later, I stepped onto the platform in Lucerne. And the first thing I saw made me stop walking. Because stretching across the river was one of the most beautiful bridges I had ever seen. But this wasn't just any bridge. It was over 600 years old. And it was hiding a secret above everyone's heads. Which made me ask one simple question. What stories are painted inside Lucerne's famous wooden bridge? When I stepped out of the train station in Lucerne, it felt like I had walked straight into a painting. Snowy mountains framed the horizon. The water of Lake Lucerne shimmered beside the city. And right in the middle of town, a medieval wooden bridge stretched across the Reuss River. But this wasn't just any bridge. It was one of the most photographed landmarks in Switzerland. And it was built more than 600 years ago. Which made me wonder, how does a wooden bridge survive 6 centuries? And what secrets could it possibly be hiding? The moment I stepped onto the Kapellbrücke, also known as the Chapel Bridge, I immediately noticed something strange. People were walking across it casually, taking selfies, laughing, completely unaware of what was above their heads. Because hanging under the roof of this medieval bridge were dozens of triangular paintings. And these paintings are centuries old. Originally created in the 1600s, they tell stories from Lucerne's past. But here's the funny thing. Most tourists walk right under them without ever looking up, which is wild, because these paintings are basically Lucerne's comic book history. One panel shows a legendary giant discovered by medieval villagers. Another shows the city in the year 1400, when the bridge was part of the town's defensive wall. Back then, soldiers guarded this crossing point. Today, it's mostly guarded by selfie sticks, but the bridge itself still tells a deeper story. Because Lucerne was once part of the small alliance that eventually became Switzerland. And the lake beside it played a huge role in that story. Which made me curious. Why do the Swiss have such a complicated name for this lake? To English speakers, it's called Lake Lucerne. Simple, easy. But the Swiss name is something else entirely. Try saying that 3 times fast. And the name literally means Lake of the 4 Forest Cantons. Those 4 regions helped form the original Swiss Confederation, which makes this lake something like the birthplace of Switzerland. But the lake isn't just historical, it's alive. Boats glide across the water all day. Small ferries connect towns along the shoreline. And every once in a while, something magical appears on the water. A huge old paddle steamer, the kind with giant spinning wheels and billowing smoke, which immediately made me think, if you're going to cruise a Swiss lake, you might as well do it in style. But before boarding a boat, I had one more stop to make. And locals warned me it might be the saddest statue in Europe. Hidden inside a quiet park in Lucerne lies one of Switzerland's most emotional monuments. The the Lion Monument. At first glance, it looks simple, a giant lion carved into a cliff face. But when you look closer, you see the details. The lion lies wounded. A broken spear pierces his side. His paw rests protectively on a shield, and his face looks filled with sorrow. The monument honors more than 700 Swiss guards who died during the French Revolution while protecting the French King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette. Swiss soldiers had a long tradition of serving as elite guards for European royalty. And when revolutionaries stormed the palace in Paris, these guards stayed loyal to the end. Most of them died defending the royal family, and the monument captures that loyalty perfectly. A powerful creature, noble, brave, but dying. And standing there quietly beside the sculpture, I suddenly realized something. Switzerland may be peaceful today, but its history is full of warriors, which raised a fascinating question. What happens when a peaceful country suddenly finds itself surrounded by enemies? That's exactly what happened during World War II. And the Swiss response was completely insane. Imagine it's 1941. Europe is collapsing. The armies of Adolf Hitler control most of the continent. Nearby, Benito Mussolini commands fascist Italy. And right in the middle sits Switzerland, neutral, but completely surrounded. The Swiss had a terrifying thought. What if we're next? So they came up with a plan so extreme it sounds like a movie plot. If an invasion happened, they would abandon their cities, retreat into the Alps, and turn the mountains themselves into a giant fortress. To understand how serious they were about this plan, I visited a hidden military site called Fortress Zurich. At first it looks like nothing, just a quiet mountain above the lake. But then a guide named Matthias Berger led me to a metal door built directly into the rock. He knocked twice. The door creaked open, and suddenly we were inside a secret underground military base. Inside the mountain, tunnels stretched deep into the rock. Concrete hallways, hidden cannon positions, rooms designed to hold soldiers for weeks. Matthias explained that Switzerland built dozens of these hidden fortresses. Together they formed a defensive network designed to make invasion impossible. Inside one chamber stood a giant artillery cannon, and Matthias said something I wasn't expecting. Go ahead, sit on it. So I did. He showed me how the targeting system worked. Numbers adjusted elevation. Coordinates aimed at mountain passes where enemy troops might advance. Or then he smiled and said, now imagine the enemy appears. And suddenly the quiet bunker felt very real. Because if Switzerland had been invaded, these mountains would have become a battlefield. But here's the crazy part. Later, historians discovered something shocking. Both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union actually had invasion plans for Switzerland. Meaning this fortress might not have been just paranoia. It might have saved the country. I'm walking through the barracks where 100 soldiers once slept in shifts. I realized how serious Switzerland was about defending its freedom. But eventually, the war ended. The bunkers were retired, and the Swiss returned to what they do best, building peaceful, beautiful cities. Which brought me to my next destination, a place locals say might be the most charming capital city in Europe. So I boarded another Swiss train and headed toward a city built on a river bend. A city filled with fountains, bears, and a clock that has been performing a mechanical show for almost 500 years. Welcome to Bern. But the moment I arrived, I realized something strange. This capital city didn't feel like a capital at all, which made me wonder, why does Switzerland's capital feel more like a relaxed medieval village than the center of a modern government? When my train rolled into Bern, I expected something very official. You know, government buildings, serious politicians, security everywhere. After all, this is the capital of Switzerland. But within minutes of walking around, I realized something strange. Bern doesn't feel like a capital city at all. It feels like a medieval town that accidentally became the center of a modern country. And that's because the entire historic center of Bern sits on a dramatic bend in the Air River. And the river loops around the city like a giant protective moat. From above, the city looks like it's sitting on a peninsula. From the streets, it feels like stepping back into the Middle Ages. Stone buildings stretch down long streets lined with covered hundreds of years. And the reason for that comes down to one devastating event: a fire. In the year 1405, a massive fire swept through Bern. At the time, most buildings were made of wood, which meant the flames spread quickly. Large parts of the city burned down. But when Bern rebuilt itself, the citizens made a decision that would shape the city forever. No more wooden buildings. Instead, they rebuilt everything with a unique gray-green sandstone. That's why Bern has such a distinctive look today. Rows of stone buildings create a calm, elegant atmosphere that feels both ancient and timeless. But if you walk through the city carefully, you'll notice something colorful interrupting all that gray stone. Brightly painted fountains, lots of them, and every single one tells a story. Bern is famous for its 16th century fountains. They stand in the middle of streets and plazas like decorative sculptures. But they're more than decoration. Each one represents a character from local history or legend. Warriors, heroes, mythical figures. Some fountains even show scenes meant to teach moral lessons. One famous example shows an ogre eating children, a rather dramatic way of telling kids to behave. And while the fountains add color to the city, Bern's true mascot is something much fuzzier, because the city itself was named after a bear. Legend says the founder of Bern promised to name the city after the first animal he hunted in the surrounding forest. That animal turned out to be a bear, which explains why bear symbols appear everywhere: flags, statues, logos. Bern absolutely loves its bears. But the most famous attraction in the city isn't a fountain or a bear. It's a tower. And every single hour, that tower comes alive. Standing at the entrance to the old city is Zytglogge. Originally, it served as the main gate of the medieval city wall. But in the 1500s, something extraordinary was added to it: a mechanical clock show. And this isn't just any clock. This thing has been performing every hour since 1530. The crowd gathered in the square as the top of the hour approached. Phones ready, cameras up. Then suddenly, the rooster crowed. Small mechanical bears began marching in circles. A colorful jester rang bells. And finally, Father Time flipped his hourglass. It felt like watching a tiny medieval theater show, all powered by gears and mechanics designed nearly 500 years ago. Which makes sense. Switzerland is famous for watches, and this clock was basically high-tech engineering for its time. But the clock tower also reminded me of something else. Bern might look medieval, but it also runs a modern country. And the way Switzerland governs itself is actually very unusual. The Swiss government operates from buildings near the heart of Bern, and at first glance it seems similar to other democracies. There's a parliament, there are elected officials. But here's the twist. Switzerland doesn't really have a single powerful president. Instead, executive power is shared by 7 leaders. Together they form a council that runs the country collectively. Every year, one of them becomes the ceremonial president, but the position rotates. This system exists for a simple reason. The Swiss wanted to prevent one person from gaining too much power. It forces cooperation, compromise, and constant negotiation. It's basically a political system built around consensus. But Bern doesn't just experiment with politics. It experiments with social policies too, some of which might surprise visitors, especially when it comes to a topic many countries struggle with: drug. Like many nations, Switzerland has dealt with drug addiction problems, but instead of focusing entirely on punishment, the Swiss took a different approach. They treated addiction as a health problem instead of a crime problem. One surprising example can be found in public restrooms across cities like Bern. Many of them use blue lighting. Why? Because blue light makes veins harder to see, which discourages people from injecting drugs in these bathrooms. It's a simple idea designed to push addicts towards safer environments where they can get help. The country also created programs that provide clean needles, counseling, medical treatment. The goal is to reduce harm rather than simply punish addiction. It's a pragmatic solution that has sparked debate around the world. But the Swiss philosophy often comes down to one principle: if a policy saves lives and improves society, it's worth trying. But after exploring government buildings and city streets, I discovered something that might be the most fun tradition in Bern. Curious and slightly nervous, I joined them. The water was icy, but once the current grabbed hold, I understood why locals loved it. You float past medieval bridges, green riverbanks, stone buildings rising above the city. It might be the most relaxing way to sightsee ever invented. And honestly, floating through a capital city surrounded by medieval towers is something I never expected to do. But Bern still had one more surprise waiting. A place dedicated to one of Switzerland's most imaginative artists. A man whose paintings confuse, delight, and inspire people all over the world. Obscene 17, the art of Paul Klee. Just outside the city sits the Zentrum Paul Klee. The building itself looks like three giant waves rising from the landscape. It was designed by famous architect Renzo Piano, and inside it celebrates the life and work of Swiss artist Paul Klee. Klee's art is hard to describe. It's playful, abstract. Sometimes it looks like symbols from another language. One famous painting, Ad Parnassum, uses tiny colored squares to create a shimmering landscape. Another, Insula Dulcamara, feels like a mysterious puzzle filled with hidden meanings. Some people see symbolism, others see pure imagination. Klee believed art should be accessible to everyone, which is why the museum includes spaces where children create their own interpretations of his work. Watching kids experiment with colors and shapes reminded me of something important. Sometimes creativity works best when you forget the rules. But my journey through Swiss cities wasn't finished yet, because one final destination waited beside one of Europe's most famous lakes. A city filled with hills. A museum devoted to art created by society's outsiders. And a tower where someone still calls out the time every night, just like they did centuries ago. So I boarded another train and headed toward Lausanne. But the moment I arrived, I realized this city might be the most unusual stop of the entire trip, which made me wonder, why do some of the world's strangest and most powerful artworks live in Lausanne? The train curved gently along the edge of Lake Geneva, and suddenly the view opened up like a movie scene. Water stretched endlessly to the horizon. Mountains rose in the distance. And on the northern shore sat the elegant hillside city of Lausanne. At first glance, Lausanne looked calm, almost sleepy. But this place had one of the most unusual identities of any city in Switzerland. Because this wasn't just a city. This was the Olympic capital of the world. But before discovering that, I wanted to understand the city itself. And that journey began with something strange. Something called outsider art. In a quiet 18th century palace stood one of the strangest museums I'd ever visited. The Collection de l'Art Brut. Most museums celebrate famous artists, but this one did the opposite. It celebrated people who weren't part of the art world at all. Some artists here had been prisoners. Others had been psychiatric patients. Some had never even met another artist, yet their works were incredibly powerful. The term art brut means raw art. It was popularized by French artist Jean Dubuffet, who believed that true creativity comes from people outside the traditional art scene. Walking through the museum felt different from visiting normal galleries. These artworks weren't polished. They were intense, personal, sometimes even unsettling. But they felt incredibly honest. One drawing looked like a giant city built entirely from numbers and symbols. Another piece was made from thousands of tiny repetitive lines drawn over years. These artists weren't trying to impress critics. They were simply expressing what was inside their minds. And that made the experience strangely powerful. But Lausanne wasn't only about experimental art. Right above the city stood something far older, a cathedral that had been watching over this city for centuries. Or climbing uphill through Lausanne's winding streets eventually led me to one of the city's most iconic landmarks, the Lausanne Cathedral. Built in the 13th century, it's considered one of the most important Gothic buildings in Switzerland. Its towering structure dominates the skyline. But what fascinated me most wasn't the architecture. It was the night watch tradition. Every single night since the year 1405, a watchman has stood on the cathedral tower and shouted the time to the city. Yes, you heard that right. For more than 600 years, someone has literally been calling out the hours of the night. Why? Because centuries ago, fires were one of the biggest dangers to cities. The watchman's job was to stay awake, monitor the town, and alert everyone if something went wrong. Today, the tradition continues purely for history, and locals still love it. Standing there, imagining a voice echoing across the city every hour felt surreal. But Lausanne had another side entirely. A much more modern one tied to athletes, stadiums, and one of the biggest global events ever created. Not many people know this, but the headquarters of the International Olympic Committee is located right here in Lausanne, which is why the city is often called the Olympic capital. And overlooking the lake sits one of the coolest museums dedicated to sports ever built, the Olympic Museum. Walking into it felt like entering a time capsule of athletic history. Inside were Olympic torches from different years, medals from past competitions, equipment used by legendary athletes. You could literally trace the evolution of the Olympic Games from ancient Greece to the present day. One section recreated the ancient Olympic Games in Olympia. Another showed how the modern Olympics were revived in 1896 by Pierre de Coubertin. There were also interactive exhibits. You could test your reaction speed, compare your sprint time to professional athletes, or see how high Olympic pole vaulters jump. Let's just say, my results were not Olympic level, but the museum captured something powerful. The idea that sports bring people from every country together, even during times when politics and conflicts divide the world. And after exploring all that history, it was finally time to go outside. Because Lausanne's waterfront is where the city truly shines. At the bottom of the hill sits a beautiful district called Auchy. This area used to be a fishing village centuries ago. Today, it's one of the most relaxing spots in the entire city. Palm trees line the promenades. Boats glide slowly across the lake. People sit on benches eating ice cream and watching the sunset. And right along the water sits the elegant Beau Rivage Palace, a historic hotel that has hosted royalty and celebrities for over a century. Standing there by the lake, it finally hit me. This trip had taken me through 4 very different Swiss cities. The financial powerhouse of Zurich, the fairy tale beauty of Lucerne, the medieval capital Bern, and now the artistic Olympic city of Lausanne. Each one felt completely different, yet they were all connected by one thing: Switzerland's incredible transportation system. In just a few hours, you could move from medieval streets to mountain lakes to modern financial districts. And somehow, it all worked perfectly. After traveling across these cities, one question kept coming back to me. How does a small country manage to balance so many identities? Luxury banking hubs, quiet medieval towns, experimental art, ancient traditions, cutting-edge politics, and breathtaking natural scenery. The answer might be something Switzerland does better than almost any country: balance, tradition, and innovation, history and modern life, local independence and national unity. But even after visiting these cities, I felt like I had only scratched the surface. Because beyond them lie hidden alpine villages, glacier railways, secret mountain bunkers, and landscapes that look straight out of fantasy movies. Which makes me wonder, if these cities were only the beginning, what other incredible places might still be hiding deeper inside Switzerland? Please subscribe and like for more amazing contents. Until next time, stay healthy and happy.